Everyone, welcome back. Raise your hand if you've ever sat at your desk, stared at the screen, known exactly what you need to do, and been completely unable to start. That's what today is about. Not the why. We've talked about that quite a bit. We've been talking about overwhelm. Today is the how. What do you actually do right now when your brain has decided that it's just not going to cooperate? Because just do it isn't an answer. I mean, it's the one that you hear all the time. Set a timer is not always an answer. Think about how good it will feel is patronizing and also neurologically incorrect for most ADHD brains when you're stuck. So today we're going to talk about what actually works. Hey, if you don't know me, I am Shannon Schroeder. I am the F-Bomb coach and I help ADHD women build sustainable systems for their business. So let's get into it. Before we get into what changes you need to make and what moves to do to get yourself unstuck, something that you need to do is figure out what kind of stuck you're in. Using the wrong unstick move for the wrong kind of stuck can make it worse. So we have 4 distinct stuck states, and the intervention for each is a little bit different. So first, we have foggy. Low energy, you can't concentrate, everything feels full of effort and distant like you're moving through syrup. This is typically cognitive fatigue or low dopamine. It's going to show up after a difficult stretch of things or later in the day. The fix is lowering activation energy, not pushing harder. Movement and micro tasks. Flooded. Too many things pulling your attention. You can't pick just one. Everything feels equally urgent and equally impossible. This is working memory overload. Too much in the buffer with nowhere to go. The fix is an external dump. Get everything out of your head and onto paper where it can be triaged instead of circling and circling and circling. Frightened. You know exactly what you need to do. You're avoiding it specifically. It has an emotional charge. This is the avoidance loop. RSD, identity, stakes, fear of outcome. The fix isn't start the task, it's the unstick protocol. We want to, oh, and I skipped frozen, silly me. Frozen. Your brain is offline. You can't make decisions. You can't start. You can't think clearly. This is overwhelm or dysregulation. The nervous system is in threat mode. No amount of productivity is going to, techniques are going to work there. You have to regulate first. So diagnose before you act. I want to take a minute to talk about common advice because I think it helps to understand specifically why it fails for neurodivergent brains. Just start anywhere. This works when motivation is low. It does not work when the task is emotionally loaded or when the brain is dysregulated. The problem isn't not knowing where to start, it's that the neurological barrier to start, that initiation, is up high. Starting anywhere is still starting, and the threat response blocks it regardless of what direction you're approaching from. Break it into small steps. Excellent advice in a regulated functional state. In a frozen state, even the smallest step feels impossible because the problem isn't the size of the task, it's the initiation dysfunction. You can break it into 100 steps and still stare at step 1. Set a timer for 5 minutes. The Pomodoro technique assumes that you can begin work. Task initiation dysfunction means the barrier is before the timer even starts. The timer doesn't help you get into the work, it only helps you sustain it once you're in. Think about how good you'll feel after. Future-oriented motivation is a prefrontal cortex function. The prefrontal cortex is the part offline when you're stuck. This is like telling someone on a broken ankle to think about how fast they'll run when it's healed. Technically true. Completely unhelpful right now. The common thread here is that most mainstream productivity advice is designed for brains with intact initiation function. For neurodivergent entrepreneurs with task initiation dysfunction, a fundamentally different approach is needed. So here's something a lot of people don't understand about task initiation difficulties. They're not motivation failures. They are executive function failures. And those two things need different solutions. And you could be struggling with both. There will be days that it's going to be a low motivation thing, and other days it's going to be task initiation. Different things, different solutions. Low motivation looks like this. You don't really want to do the task. You'd rather be doing something else. The reward feels too far away. Starting feels a little unpleasant. The fix there is making it more appealing. Change the environment, add a reward, make it more interesting. Task initiation dysfunction looks different. You want to do the task genuinely. You understand why it matters. You see the reward clearly, and you still can't start. Not because you're choosing not to, because there is a neurological barrier between intention and action that isn't responding to the motivation-based interventions. And here's what makes this particularly gutting. The inability to start despite wanting to doesn't feel neutral. It feels devastating. The frustration compounds, the shame piles on, and suddenly you're not just dealing with the original stuck state, you're dealing with the shame of being stuck on top of it. Understanding this as a problem, because it's not motivation, changes what you reach for and how you approach it. Here are 7 moves that lower that activation barrier where your brain is stuck. Not motivational, neurological. Move 1, the 2-minute lie. Tell your brain you're only doing 2 minutes and mean it. You genuinely can stop at 2 minutes. The goal is getting across the initiation threshold, not completing the task. What frequently happens is once you're in the work, momentum carries you past the 2 minutes. But sometimes it doesn't. If it's something like you really hate doing, 2 minutes of actual work is still better than 0. The lie isn't about the time. It's about removing the I'm committed to this to actually get to the end for the next 3 hours. That kind of pressure is what your brain can't handle. So you just do 2 minutes and then you walk away and then you come back a little while later and do 2 minutes more. And sooner or later, momentum will pick up. Move 2, change your location. Physicality resets context faster than almost anything. Go to a coffee shop, a different room, go outside, your kitchen table instead of your desk. New environment equals new neurological state. Your brain isn't carrying the same, this is the place where I've been stuck for an hour kind of association. This is free immediately, and a lot of people really underuse it. Move 3, body double. Work alongside another person, physically or virtually, while both of you work. No conversation required at all. The social present activates different regulation circuit in the ADHD brain that makes focus easier. Move 4, talk it out first. Do a voice memo, call someone, a business bestie that you have, explain the task out loud to your rubber duck that you keep sitting on your desk, or maybe a plant, if that's what you got. Externalizing the description does 2 things. It unlocks working memory by moving information out of your head into an external space, and it reduces the emotional weight of the task before you engage with it. The task always sounds smaller outside than it does in your head. We make things really big in our heads. Move 5, the worst version permission. Explicitly give yourself permission to do the worst job you would normally do. Bad draft, ugly slide, doesn't matter. The ugliest possible version that technically still exists, right? Here's why this works. Your internal critic fires up when you're performing. It doesn't fire as hard when you've explicitly lowered the performance standard to functional. Remove the performance, and you remove a significant chunk of what's blocking that initiation. We're not going to leave it ugly. We know this. You just have to get it out there first, and then you can work on making it better later. Move 6, anchor it to something already moving. Attach the blocked task to something your brain is already doing. Work on it during a walk. Do it while music plays. Start it right after a task you completed successfully because you're riding the high of I did it. Piggybacking on existing momentum is much easier than generating momentum from scratch. And move 7, make the first step embarrassingly small. Not open the document smaller. Move the file to the desktop. Type your name on the blank page. Write 1 terrible sentence, any sentence. Embarrassingly small is the target. You're not accomplishing the task. You're just breaking that seal of movement. That's what you need to do. 4 moments when you're mid-stuck and the day is getting away from you. Here's an 8-minute emergency sequence that you can go through. 2 minutes of physical interrupt. Stand up, shake out your hands and arms, step outside for 60 seconds, cold water on your face. You're breaking that physical state that you're in, okay? Body leads the brain. Then 3 minutes, a brain dump. Just this, on paper, write what is the task, what feels scary or uncertain about it, what's the smallest possible move. Don't organize this as a brain dump. Don't make it a plan, just get it out of your head. The act of dumping externalizes the anxiety and will usually shrink it. 1 minute. Pick 1 tiny move. From your dump, Identify one action so small you'd feel embarrassed telling someone it took you this long to do it. That's your first move. Not the whole task, not the first step, just the tiny move. 2 minutes, set the environment, change the location or put on your work music, remove everything that competes for your attention. Phone away, tabs closed, anything that gives your brain an easier option than the task. You're not starting yet, you're just setting the condition so the tiny move is the path of least resistance. And then go, just do the tiny move. Not the whole task, not the whole first step, the tiny move, that's it. Everything after that is optional, but you've broken the stuck state and the next thing gets easier. That's a total of 8 minutes from stuck to at least moving. I want to spend a moment on body doubling specifically because if you haven't used it deliberately, you're leaving out one of the most evidence-based backed tools for ADHD task initiation. Body doubling is simply working alongside another person while both of you work. It doesn't require conversation, collaboration, or even the same project. It just requires presence, physical or virtual. Here's why it works. The social presence activates a regulatory circuit in the ADHD brain and makes focus more accessible. Your brain behaves differently when it knows it's being observed, even passively. This is not a personality trait or preference, it's a neurological response. So it's not about, oh, they're watching me and I have to perform, but it kind of is. Even if they're not checking in on you, they're not saying, are you working? This is them just being there. Virtual co-working, on a call, video call with a peer, cameras on, both working. You can mute, you can turn your camera away, but the presence is what matters. Go to a coffee shop or library. The ambient social presence of other people working is a form of body doubling. That's why these places are so productive for ADHD brains. Live streaming your work. Some ADHDers find that working in public on streaming platforms is effective. You're being watched, which activates the same circuit, like going live on TikTok or Instagram or something. Accountability partner check-ins. 10 minutes on the video at the start of a work block. State your attention. Reconvene at the end. Book ending adds structure without requiring sustained social interaction. Lo-fi study streams. Not as powerful as real human presence, but is accessible when you're, doing some solo work days. Someone on screen working is still a social signal to your brain. And community co-working sessions, working with other people, scheduled co-working with other people in a group can help. Here's the principle that I want you to carry. If you're relying on willpower to start, you've already made it harder than it needs to be. Willpower is a limited, depletable resource that is already running thin on hard days for you. The environment, by contrast, costs nothing to engineer and doesn't get tired. Let the environment do the load-bearing work. Open the document before you go to sleep the night before. Waking up tomorrow inside the task is already different from waking up and having to face the task before you can start. Future you will thank you for removing that one barrier, little thing. Create a work-specific playlist and use it only for work. Classical conditioning is real. It works. After enough repetition, the music becomes a physiological cue that tells your nervous system we're in work mode now. The music starts and the brain shifts. Put your phone in another room. Not try to ignore it when it sits next to you. Physically remove the option. Your brain should not have to compete with your phone's existence. That competition is cognitive overhead and it's costing you. You need that cognitive energy for the task. Preload tomorrow's task before you close today. Write it down, open the file. Future you knows what you have to do. That's one less decision made in the morning when your brain is still warming up. Set a visible timer before you need it. The presence of the timer changes behavior before it starts. It signals that there's structure here, a container, a defined period. And finally, get the physical environment right first. Temperature, lighting, noise levels, sensory friction kills initiation faster than almost anything, and it's usually the most overlooked variable. If your workspace is the wrong temperature or the wrong noise level for your brain, fix that before you try to fix your motivation. Here's something that I've noticed working with ADHDers. Most stuck states aren't primarily about inability. They're about permission not given to yourself yet. The stuck state is often maintained by an implicit rule the brain is enforcing. Something like, I have to do this right, or I have to do this all the way through, or I have to start at the beginning. Those rules cost you more than you realize, and you may not even realize that your brain has instituted those rules. So I want to give you some permission so that you can give it to yourself. Permission to do it badly. Explicitly said out loud or in writing. I tell this when I'm teaching English classes all the time. Let the first draft be crappy. Just get some words on the paper because you can always fix them once they're out there. The first version of this will be terrible, and that's fine. Your inner critic is the performance critic. It shows up hardest when you're trying to produce something worthy of judgment. Remove the performance standard. Temporarily, we know what things are going out in public, but not yet. Permission for it to be incomplete. I don't have to finish this today. I just have to start. This is powerful because the brain often treats starting and committing to finishing as the same thing, but they're not. Separating them is what changes that. Permission to start in the middle. I don't have to start at the beginning. Write the section that you can already see clearly. Do the module that's most accessible. Work on the part that has the least emotional charge right now. Starting in the middle still counts as starting. And a lot of times it's going to unlock the rest. You get that piece off that's easier for you, and then you can start to see the other pieces. Permission to take breaks mid-task. I can stop and come back. Neurodivergent brains often avoid starting because it feels like they're being trapped in the task until it's done. If stopping mid-task is explicitly allowed, it starts costing you less. Permission for it to not be perfect before it helps anyone. The person who needs what you are creating doesn't need it to be perfect. They need it to exist. Good enough to be useful is a higher standard than it sounds. It's sufficient and standard for launching. Here's a part that when we're looking at how to unstick, we don't, understand, we don't recognize, we don't talk about. Sometimes nothing works, not because you're doing it wrong, but because your nervous system is at or past capacity. If you've regulated, you've tried the unstick moves, you've changed location, you've given yourself every permission, you've shrunk the first step to something embarrassingly small, and still you can't start. That's information. Your nervous system is telling you something specific. It does not have the resources available to do this task today. Forcing it from this state creates bad work, compounds the shame, and often makes tomorrow worse. Here's what actually helps. Stop trying to force the output. Forcing is not neutral. It's using resources that aren't there and leaving you more depleted. Move to the minimum viable day framework. What absolutely must happen today? What can be released? Not postponed, released. I'm done. I'm letting it go. Answer those two questions and give yourself that as a day. Protect tomorrow. A depleted day followed by a genuine recovery is a much better outcome than 2 depleted days in a row. Make a choice to deliberately do this. Protect yourself and give yourself time to bounce back. That is a business decision. Document what took you down. If you're hitting this wall regularly on certain types of tasks or in certain conditions, that's a pattern. Patterns are systems problems that you can fix. The goal is not to become someone who never gets stuck. That person doesn't exist. The goal is to get unstuck faster every time, to have the protocol already built before you need it, to make the gap between stuck and moving shorter each time it happens. And this is how you build it. Write your personal stuck diagnosis questions. Put them somewhere visible: frozen, foggy, flooded, or frightened. Knowing which one you're in is half the battle. Build your work signals playlist now. Use it only for work. Pre-schedule at least one body doubling session per week. Don't wait until you're stuck to find one. Build it into the regular week so it's already available when you need it. Keep a smallest possible step list for recurring tasks. The email you write once a week, the content you create regularly. What's the tiny move for each of those? Decide now when you're thinking clearly so you don't have to decide when you're stuck. And after every stuck episode, write one sentence about what unstuck you. You're building your own protocol. You're personalizing it to your brain. Over time, that protocol gets faster and more reliable. So here's your one thing today. Write down your go-to unstick move, the one thing that when you use it actually breaks the stuck state for you. Maybe it's changing locations. Maybe it's the 2-minute lie. Maybe it's body doubling. Write it somewhere you can find it when you need it, because when you're stuck, when you're frozen or flooded or frightened, you will not remember this video. You're not going to remember that you have options. You will just feel stuck. Have it written, have it visible, have it ready. That's the whole thing that you need to do today. If you found this helpful, please hit like, subscribe, share with someone else, and I will see you in the next video.